From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, December the 4th, 2023. 4 IDF soldiers were killed this weekend during intense battles with terror group Hamas in Gaza, which resumed after Hamas violated the terms of the temporary truce agreement on Friday. They are 36-year-old Sergeant Major in Reserve Neria Sha'er, 22-year-old Sergeant First Class in Reserve Ben Zussman, 19-year-old Sergeant Binyamin Yehoshua Needham, and 25-year-old Sergeant First Class in Reserve Or Brandes. 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Ashalwu Sama was wounded in battle on November the 14th and died of his wounds on Saturday. And the IDF announced that a senior officer missing since the October 7th massacre was, in fact, killed that day, his remains being held by Hamas in Gaza. He is 41-year-old Colonel Asaf Hamami. He was the commander of the Gaza Division's Southern Brigade. During the IDF's operational activity in Gaza this weekend, hundreds of terror targets were hit and Hamas terrorists eliminated, including 2 senior Hamas commanders, both of whom the IDF said were part of the planning and direction of the Hamas massacre of October the 7th. One of the 2 also directed an attack on IDF soldiers in 2014, where 7 soldiers were killed, including Staff Sergeant Oron Shaul, whose remains, along with those of Lieutenant Hadar Golden, are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. The IDF also continued to hit terror targets in Lebanon this weekend, responding to rockets and other fire from Hezbollah terrorists. And overnight last night, IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari said a number of mortar bombs were detected from Lebanese territory towards an IDF post. As a result, 3 IDF soldiers were slightly injured and evacuated for medical treatment. And barrages of rockets were fired throughout the weekend at southern and central Israel, continuing into today. The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Spoliarich-Egger, arrived today in Gaza, where she said people's suffering is intolerable. I repeat our urgent call, she said, for civilians to be protected in line with the laws of war and for aid to enter unimpeded. And she said the hostages must be released and the ICRC allowed to safely visit them. It is believed that 137 Israeli hostages remain in captivity in Gaza after being abducted by Hamas on October the 7th. Men, women, and children. Israel's mission to the United Nations held a special session at UN headquarters in New York City today on sexual and gender-based violence in the October 7th Hamas terror attack. Outside the UN, dozens protested against the inaction by the UN on this matter. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, presented, he said, findings proving the horrors and shocking acts of sexual violence committed by Hamas terrorists against Israeli women in the October 7th massacre. And he said, demanding the clear condemnation and recognition of Hamas's sexual crimes by the UN and the international community. Something Erdogan said the UN and its organizations completely ignored for almost 60 days. UN Women, its organization that champions the protection of women, finally issued a condemnation of the Hamas atrocities this past Friday. Writing, we unequivocally condemn the brutal attacks by Hamas on Israel on the 7th of October. We are alarmed by the numerous accounts of gender-based atrocities and sexual violence during those attacks, calling for an investigation. Attendees at the UN session today included Jewish organization leaders, celebrities like Jewish actresses Deborah Messing and Juliana Margulies, and speakers included Erdogan, as well as former COO of Facebook and founder of Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who spoke of the silence from many women's rights groups.
When I saw the list of women's rights organizations who have said nothing, I nearly choked. Where is the solidarity for women in this country and in this world to stand up for our mothers, our sisters, and our daughters.
Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, December the 4th at 7 o'clock. Rabbi Ammiel Hirsch's Dispatches from Israel. At 7:30, author Eric Alterman discusses We Are Not One, a history of America's fight over Israel. At 8, Abigail Pogrebin speaks with Samuel G. Freedman about Into the Bright Sunshine, his book that celebrates one of the overlooked landmarks of civil rights history. At 8:30, Eric Goldman speaks with directors Dan Geller and Dana Goldfein, who discuss their film about Leonard Cohen. At 9, Masha Merkulova is on L'chaim. At 10, it's Witness with William Bernheim. And coming up next, it's Good Week, Israel. And that's the JBS News Update for Monday, December the 4th, 2023. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.